Today, let's share with you 10 secrets the pros are using to create successful podcasts. Hey there, podcaster. My name is the Shan Man, radio broadcaster, podcaster, and a podcast producer. And in today's video, we are talking about 10 secrets that the pros are using to create successful podcasts. Now, before we jump into it, I want to remind you, the podcaster who maybe has been a subscriber to this channel for maybe a little while, but you haven't explored my channel completely, just know that at any time, you can go to the front page of my YouTube channel and you can see that I have set out a series of lists that go in a certain, I guess you could say, chronological order to help you, the podcaster, on your journey. Depending on whether or not you are at the beginning part of your journey or maybe you're in the middle of your journey, there are answers right there that you can likely find if you are struggling with any part of your podcast. Part of today's video was spawned because of those playlists, but I wanted to share this list with you so that you could see where I was going with some of those previous videos that I have created on my YouTube channel. So I hope that you enjoy them, but in the meantime, enjoy these top 10 things right now. So number one, I want to talk to you about your sound quality. Do you have great sound quality with your podcast? Now, I get this question asked almost every other day with people who are reaching out to me wanting to create a great podcast, and they say, well, should I really be recording with this particular microphone, or should I be recording with my iPhone? Should I be recording with my Android? And the bottom line is that if you want to become a great podcaster, I'm going to tell you right now, the great podcasters have invested their time and money into the equipment that they have created for their podcast, or that they use for their podcast. They're not using their iPhone. They're not using old microphones. They have likely invested. Now, does it mean that you have to invest? It's going to be really up to you. You're going to have to decide what is a valuable investment for you. For some podcasters, it may be getting the Shure SM7B microphone, but for other podcasters, it might be as simple as getting a Shure SM58 instead. It's just really going to all depend on what you see as going to be the game changer in terms of your sound quality. Graduating from an Android phone, or maybe graduating from the laptop onboard microphone into an actual microphone with a mixer. It's going to be up to you. But the great podcasters, they have invested in equipment, and they are investing it because they know they want to sound more legit for their listeners. Number two, have you invested in paid hosting? Now, this is a very touchy subject for a lot of people who come onto my channel because either they appreciate the information that I've shared about one particular video on my channel, or they absolutely denounce who I am and they think that I'm being very unfair about this particular service that is out there. And the service that I'm talking about is Anchor, and I've caught a lot of flack about that video, but I have equally caught a lot of praise from people who have been on Anchor and have told me, you know, what you shared in that video couldn't be more true, at least for my objectives and my podcast. How do I get my podcast off of Anchor, and how do I get it onto a legitimate paid hosting service? So most of the great podcasts that are out there, I would say most, there's some that are probably on Anchor, but I would say most of them are using some form of paid hosting, whether that hosting is going to be Libsyn, it could be Blueberry, it could be Podbean, Simplecast. Simplecast just happens to be the one that I'm using right now with a current client, and I love the service, but it's going to be up to you. You're going to get more in terms of customer service. Also, you're going to get more in terms of the delivery of your podcast into these specific platforms where podcasts are consumed. The complaints that I have about Anchor are that the podcasts aren't either showing up on time whenever I scheduled releases happening, or some of the episodes that they've released in the past have disappeared. And I'm not going to say, whether or not this is something that is a consistent thing, because I don't use Anchor. And I'm not saying that Anchor is a bad service to use. But I will say this: if you're looking to step up your game and sound like a great podcaster, or create a podcast that is a little more pro, you might want to invest in the paid hosting, because you're going to get more in terms, like I said, of the customer service, the analytics, and the ability to move and shift yourself to different services when it comes to maybe not liking one service and preferring one over the other. So really, really be careful about the services that you are using that are free, because they likely are not benefiting you down the line. Number 3, are you including show notes on a blog website? I mean, I should even just ask the question, do you even have a blog for your podcast. And the majority of podcasters out there who say they want to grow their podcast, they want to be a great podcast, and they want to have tons of subscribers, and they want to be eventually make this into maybe their full-time thing, they say, oh, I don't have a podcast website. I don't have an actual website for myself. And I always recommend to them that you're going to have some form of website, whether you have a WordPress website, you have a Squarespace website. Me, I particularly have a Kajabi website because it handles everything that I need in terms of capturing more people who are going to be involved in my universe, but it also handles things like point of sale. If I decide that I want to sell digital products, it also handles membership sites, everything that I need in order to create a better experience for my listener. But the most important thing when it comes down to having a blog for your podcast are the show notes. The show notes are probably the single most important thing that are driving people to not only your website, but to your podcast itself. It doesn't mean that, you're not, you can't rely completely on Apple Podcasts. I mean, you are going to get a lot of people who are probably going to discover you inside of these platforms. But one way in which people are consuming content, the way we research, the way we're always looking for the right answer is that we always head to Google. And when we head to Google, we are getting a certain set of search results based on the text that is placed inside of that blog post. So what you're seeing the best podcasters do, or what you're seeing the pro podcasters do, is they are creating the entire transcript of a conversation and embedding it or putting it inside of their blog post so that Google can give the best search results when a certain type of keyword is searched inside of Google and gives the result on that side. And hopefully that result is going to be your blog post to where they can discover not only the transcript, but the podcast itself. Because in reality, let's think about it. Most people aren't going to go through and they aren't going to read the entire transcript. They want to listen to it. So what you want to have is you want to have those show notes there, those transcripts, along with the player that is above the fold. In other words, you want the player at the very top of the page so that people can click on the actual player so they can start listening to your podcast. The text is strictly so that you can have it on Google, so you can have yourself found inside of a Google search. Number 4, are you investing in email marketing? All the pros are doing this right now. They've been doing it for many, many years, whether they're YouTubers or whether they're podcasters, whether they're online marketers. They're utilizing email marketing. Why? Because we still check email. Email has never been dead. It's not going to die anytime soon. We still check our emails every day, whether we're receiving a bill, whether we are subscribed to a podcast, whether we are getting an Amazon order, we still check our email. And email is typically the way in which we are signing up for most things. I mean, I realize now these days you can sign in using a Facebook or a Google account, but still there's an email tied to those accounts. So it's going to be very important that you understand the value of what email marketing is and how email marketing can help boost and drive more people to not only listen to your podcast, but invest themselves in what you have to say. Every week when I drop a brand new video on this particular YouTube channel, I send out an email to my subscribers letting them know that I have a brand new video that is available for them to consume. Those of you who are my subscribers, you have seen this every single week. This is so that I can drive the traffic to those particular pieces of content that I am providing for them. Not only do I drive the traffic there, but it is helping my podcast, or it's helping my YouTube video rank in certain areas, whether it be on the web or on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, or wherever. That's the purpose behind email marketing, is that you're trying to drive people to help your rankings on those particular pieces of content to get more people to listen. Number 5, have you committed to a consistent podcast release schedule? This is something that I get emailed about all the time from podcasters saying, well, do I have to release on the same day every week in order to get more podcast listeners? Now, these aren't my rules, but I would say these are rules that the internet is really kind of implementing for content creators that are out there. And when we see consistency, we see consistent content constantly being uploaded into the internet, then the Google algorithm starts to see that there's content that could be referred or that could be recommended to certain people. The same goes for Apple Podcasts. The same goes for YouTube. It could be just about anything. But the key also is the behavior of your listener. When you create this behavior with your listener that a podcast is going to be released at a specific time on a specific day, They look forward to this. Think about your own listening habits and how you listen to podcasts. When a podcast comes out every Tuesday that is all about, let's say, cooking, and it's a specific time, it's barbecue cooking, and that podcast creator doesn't release a podcast on that specific day. They've been consistent ever since, but they don't release a podcast on that specific day. How disappointed are you? You get pretty disappointed. So think about that. Think about the consistency and the listening behavior, because you build a valuable and loyal audience whenever you are releasing a consistent podcast every single week. Stay consistent, because that's what the pros are doing. Number 6, are you investing time and money into learning how to make money? Podcasting is all about getting the listeners and building an audience, right? But when we start seeing that we are gathering a large audience, we want to figure out how to earn that money. Now, you need to probably take the time and effort to start looking about how you can monetize. And think about this. Monetization just isn't in the form of sponsorships. I explain this so much to the students that I teach when I talk about monetization, and I say it is not specifically based in sponsorships. Monetization comes in many different forms, and what are you doing to figure out what those forms are? I'm familiar with them because, in radio, we find just about any opportunity to monetize any piece of content without trying to water the content down. So what can you do to create better content and possibly not only have it maybe sponsored, or what can you do to make money off of the podcast? Because it can't just always be made on the podcast. It can be made off the podcast as well. So do your research, because that's what pros are doing. Number 7, are you creating opportunities to generate leads within your own podcast? This all goes back to the email marketing portion of this particular video. Are you creating opportunities where people can get on an email list, they can subscribe, they can jump to a website? What are you doing to create these programming opportunities within your podcast to get someone to come in and be a part of your universe? Programming opportunities come in the form of segments. They come in the form of features. They also come in the form of, showcasing your own products and services. So think about the opportunities and how can you structure your podcast to where you can create those opportunities for your listeners. Number 8, are you researching other podcasters and how they are doing things? One of the things that we do in radio is that we listen to other radio personalities, and we listen to how they execute and conduct their own program. And then we take some of the ideas from those programs and we'll implement them into our own. Many years ago, there was a radio station out of Mississippi, and I became a friend of the jock that was down there, and she had this segment down there called 10 O'Clock Tool. And when it came time to implement a brand new programming segment, I actually just took the entire idea and I said to my program director, let's just do 10 O'Clock Tool. I know this station down in Mississippi is doing it, but what makes you think that we can't do it? And he said, okay, well, let's just go ahead and do that. So it doesn't mean that you have to blatantly take the idea, but you can take pieces of an idea and implement it for your own. So make sure that you are paying attention to what the good people are doing and figure out how you can implement some of those ideas into your own program. Number 9, are you showing up on other people's programs? In other words, are you getting out and promoting yourself on other people's podcasts? Are you doing your best to get on someone else's program and share value? I talk about this all the time. Podcasters reach out to me all the time and they say, I just cannot get over the hump of getting these 4,000 listens each week. How can I get it to 10,000 a week? Well, have you tried going on other people's podcasts and kind of breaking into another niche or an area in which people have never been exposed to you? That might be a way in which you can start expanding or getting more of those downloads. This is something that I had learned back in my Google Plus days, and it's something that I had already known in my radio days, is that when I showed up on other people's programs, whether it was the same radio station or I was showing up on a Google Plus Hangout for a live hangout, I was getting a series of people who appreciated what I offered. So if I offered some value on someone else's show, likely they were going to get that same value on my show. So I was cross-pollinating myself with other programs. Are you doing the same? Because the pros are doing this. They're showing up on other people's programs so that they can gather these audiences. And number 10, are you optimizing your editing time? I realize that with most podcasters, there is this unwritten rule that you have to edit out every single word, every every and this just simply isn't true. I don't know where this came from. I have a video on YouTube that talks specifically about whether or not you should edit out ums or uhs. Now, you're going to have a camp over here on the left-hand side that is going to be filled with a bunch of podcasters and podcast editors that say you have to edit out every and because it sounds ridiculous and it sounds stupid. Whereas you have a series of people on the other side, like me, who say, no, don't do that because that sounds too robotic and it sounds too produced. There's no better way to have a great listening experience than to be very, very true to yourself and authentic with how you deliver your content. Can you erase some of those ums and uhs? Yeah, some of them, but I wouldn't overdo it because that might take up way too much time when it comes to creating and developing and releasing your podcast. So take the time to learn the audio editing programs. Take the time to discover what your philosophy is on how you present on your podcast so it can make the editing time a little easier. I certainly hope these secrets have helped you out. If you have any questions, go ahead and leave a comment down in the section below and I'd be happy to answer them for you. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a thumbs up, and share this video with a friend. I'll see you next week.